To LDM Radio Sports Talk, the show that talks about sports and other topics relatable to sports fans. My name is Alfonso Caldero, and we are going to start with the NBA. Very exciting week that just transpired, especially locally. If you're a New York Knicks fan, you are absolutely excited. Since the last time we were here last week, the Knicks have not lost. They have won 8 in a row, and they've done it mostly with the all-star level play of Julius Randle, and they've really taken off since the Derrick Rose take 2 in New York took place in the middle of the season with the midseason trade. This team really came together and is looking very, very good. Again, like they're not really playing the top talent in the league, but they are doing really, really well. They did end up beating the Lakers, but of course, the Lakers right now do not have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, so it's a little tough to gauge there exactly where the team is. But let's face it, the fact that the Knicks are competitive right now, there's 6 games over 500, which they were looking like a fringe 500 team for most of the season. A lot of the preseason picks in this 72-game season had them winning maybe 25 games. So, it's exciting to be a Knicks fan right now. It's like finally, after all these years of just inept basketball and 14-win seasons and 17-win seasons, they're finally, not only are they watchable, but they're actually competitive, and you can actually count on them to win most of the time, or at least, beat up on the bad teams and then, take your chances, play 500 against the good teams. So right now, we'll start with the Western Conference. We have the Utah Jazz, who are still number 1 in the league. They've been pretty much wire to wire the best team in basketball consistently, riding the 3-pointers, which they're on pace to have the record for I'd say a modified season, just because like the NBA is playing a 72-game season instead of an 82-game season, so they wouldn't be able to go for the all-time record for a season in 3-pointers, but they'll be able to get, they would have the record for a 72-game season. They're on pace for it anyway. Then we have the Phoenix Suns, who are number 2, so they're going neck and neck. Unfortunately, the aforementioned Los Angeles Lakers, they're falling down in the standings. They're falling to the 5th seed, and one wrinkle, we'll get to it in a little bit, is the playoff structure for this year's 2020-2021 NBA season. We'll actually touch on it right now. So one wrinkle is, so your classic NBA playoffs is the top 8 teams in the regular season go on to the playoffs. The 1 seed plays the 8th seed, the 2nd seed plays the 7th seed, and so on. And then they play each other until all the eliminations, until they have a finals matchup, and then the eventual champion. So now what the NBA is doing is they're doing the top 6 teams in the NBA. So the top 6 teams in each conference. So the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, 1 through 6 is automatically into the playoffs. And then they're making a play-in tournament for the 7th to 10th place teams. All right, so try to follow me on this one. So it's going to be from May 18th to May 21st is when this is tentatively about to take place. Hopefully, there's no COVID restrictions. Basketball is going pretty well as far as the way they're handling the COVID situation and having a lot of canceled games and things like that. The NHL is a little bit of a different story, but we'll get to that a little later on. So, right. So, all right. So the seventh place team overall, in each conference, will play the eighth place team, and the winner of that team, of that game, will take ownership of the seventh seed in the playoffs. All right. So the seventh place team is playing the eighth place team. The winner plays is awarded the seventh seed. Then the ninth place team plays the 10th place team, and the winner of that game plays the loser of the 7th place team and the 8th place team. So the loser of the 9th place team and the 10th place team going against each other, they're eliminated. And then so just to make this an example standpoint, we'll use local teams. So let's say if the 7th place team is the Nets, so the 7th place team and the 8th place team, we'll use the Knicks for right now. So the 7th place team plays the 8th place team. So let's say the Nets beat the Knicks. So right now the Nets hold the 7th place seed. So then we'll do 9th place and 10th place. So we use the Chicago Bulls and that 9th place team being the Chicago Bulls, and then the 10th place team would be the Indiana Pacers. So those teams will play against each other. And then the winner of that one, we'll say the Bulls beat the Pacers. So the Pacers would be automatically eliminated. And then the Bulls would play the Knicks, who were the loser of the 7th place team and the 8th place seed. They go against each other, and the winner of that game takes over sole possession of the 8th seed. It seems a little confusing, but I think what it speaks to me is that the NBA liked the success of the play-in round that they had last year, and you had a couple of success stories. You had the Phoenix Suns going 8-0 and then not making the playoffs. You had the Blazers going 7-0 and then they took over the 8th place seed. I think there was a lot of excitement built up into it, and I think that is a part of it. And then also too, what we've seen in the NBA, what we've seen in the MLB is when they've had the extended, when they extended the wild card, they had the wild card play-in game. It creates 2 more playoff teams, and I think that's a part of the benefit of what this play-in round is going to do. So you're basically creating 4 additional playoff teams. So, you get to possibly sell some more merchandise and things like that. And just, you have 4 more fan bases who are really interested and really engaged on possibly making the playoffs and then making the run into making a deep playoff run. So, the NBA has that rolling in for them. So, right, we broke down the NBA a couple times in this show, and a lot of times we've stressed the 1 through 8 seed. But in fact, now with this playoff wrinkle, it completely changes the way one would look at the standings in the NBA. So right now we have the Jazz, the Suns, the LA Clippers, the Denver Nuggets, the Los Angeles Lakers, who are dangerously, seems like they could be possibly heading into this play-in round, and the Portland Trail Blazers. So now the Portland Trail Blazers are the number 6 seed. So Dallas, who had a very slow start to the season, is actually gaining ground, and they are a half game away from the 6th seed. The Memphis Grizzlies are 2.5 games behind the 6th seed. The Warriors and Spurs are both 3.5 games behind the 6th seed. So right now, it would basically be Dallas versus the Grizzlies in that 7th seed game, and then whoever wins gets a 7th seed game, and then the Warriors would play the Spurs, and whoever wins that game would play the Grizzlies, or the loser of the 7th and 8th slots, to get your top 8. So that's the way it's working out there. So this also creates the opportunity for the 11th and 12th seeds, who at this point there's about like 13 to 16 games, depending on what teams they are. So this is where we're at. We're basically in the last quarter of the season, and at this point it would be very clear who would be like the top 10 teams, and then who would be fighting for the top 8 slots. At this point, we have the Pelicans and the New Orleans Pelicans and the Sacramento Kings, who normally would be 4.5 games and 6 games out respectively. So right now they'd be completely out of the playoff picture. But now they're only 3.5 games and 5 games away from the 8th seed. So they have a shot. In the any given Sunday kind of realm there. So then we have in the East, the almost wire to wire, Philadelphia 76ers are still back on number 1 this week. And then the Brooklyn Nets, who are in and out of good health, are half game behind the 76ers right now. It's almost, when you look at the Nets, it's almost like they're just biding their time. It's just, we're just basically just waiting to the playoffs, and then they're going to, like, put on the switch, I think. And then, like, all the stars are going to come on, and, they're going to play every night, and then they're going to get deep into the playoffs. I think it's kind of like the Lakers from a couple of years ago, when they had, like, Shaq and Kobe, and, they weren't always, like, the number 1 dominant team, or they weren't really trying to, break the Chicago Bulls 72-game win record or anything like that. They were just, they kind of just went through the regular season, and they kind of, like, took days off and things, and then, like, theoretically took days off, like, maybe didn't give, like, max effort and winning against every single team. But then when it came playoff time, everybody just ramped up, and then they just, like, bulldozed through everybody and ended up winning. I see that very much happening in this with this Brooklyn Nets team.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then we have the Bucks, who are 3.5 games behind first place. So it's been pretty consistent, that 3-team race. But now these New York Knicks are 3.5 games behind the Bucks. So if they continue to have this hot streak that they're going on, then they could possibly get into the top 3 seeds. They are 7 games away from number 1. It'd be a stretch to get in there, but anything can happen in these last couple of games. And the fact that we're actually sitting here, the last quarter of the season, and the Knicks are knee deep in playoff territory is pretty good. I mean, the fact is, like, these New York Knicks, like, they're not going to drop all the way out of the top 10 in the East. So they have that going for them. Right now, getting into the top 6 seeds would be the most ideal.
Yeah, because it shows here, let's say the 76ers will be playing the 8th seed.
Yeah. So,
and then the Bucks look like they're going to be playing Boston.
Yeah.
So they still got a chance. Looking at the stats and the sickness, you got to look at the sickness too. Who's sick, who's not. It looked like Knicks are going to be playing the 5th.
Yeah.
So, and the Nets have to play the 7th seed, but that can be either the Hornets or the Bulls.
Absolutely. So what we're looking at here, like, the Knicks are in the same. They're 7 games away from the 1st seed, but they're also 7 games ahead of the 10th seed, which is the Washington Wizards right now. So, like, the fact is, the New York Knicks are almost a lock to make the playoffs, which is actually absolutely fantastic for New York fans. For the New York Knicks fans, and then obviously the Brooklyn Nets the Brooklyn Nets have the aspirations of having the championship. So that's the way it's been all season. So they've been excited pretty much since last year when they signed the 2 All-Stars, Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have the Hawks and the Hawks are the 5th seed, and the Boston Celtics are the 6th seed right now.
Yeah, but I see them playing the Knicks.
Yeah,
I think I see the Hawks playing the Knicks on the playoffs.
Yeah. That if everything holds the way it is right now, that would be the first round matchup, and they actually the they played earlier this week, and the Knicks they were actually down big, and then they ended up coming back and winning in overtime. And then like the Knicks, like when they get into overtime, like this past week, they've had 2 games go into overtime, and they've ended up winning the game by more than 10. It's like these guys, like they like
When their backs are against the wall, it's basically when they push over.
yeah, and that's earlier in the season. The Knicks would have the lead most of the game, and then they'd fall, in the closing minutes of the game, and then they'd end up like eventually losing the game. Now it seems like they're learning from those past experiences, and they're either coming back and then winning at the end, or they're just holding the lead wire to wire and closing it out, which is absolutely it's been fantastic to see the maturation process throughout this whole season, which is theoretically a shortened season, but it's been growing really, really well.
Half of the games have been won in their home.
Right.
So maybe there's something that they realized at their home where they can do better,
Yeah.
Because they wasn't never winning so much in their home's turf.
Yeah, I'd say the Knicks weren't really winning at all. Anyway, they weren't winning here. They weren't winning on the road. They weren't winning at Rucker Park. They really weren't winning anywhere. So now, it's just they're a winning team. It seems like the Knicks are officially back. So that's really, really good. And then, so now between the 6th seed and the 10th seed, there's 6 games difference. So the Miami Heat are a half game behind the sixth slot. The Hornets are 2.5 games behind the 6th slot. The Indiana Pacers, who, if you look at it, would be like fighting for the 8th seed. It'd be like a stretch maybe if they made the playoffs. They're actually 4 games behind the 6th seed, and then the Wizards are 6 games behind. So it looks like the Heat are going to play the Hornets, and then the Pacers would play the Wizards, and it's just it's a bunch of craziness. So I guess it does add a little more excitement. And then you have the 11th seed and the 12th seeds, who would be absolutely just blown out the water at this point as far as making the playoffs is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
The Toronto Raptors are a half game behind the 10th seed right now.
Oh, they still playing?
Yeah. And then we have the Chicago Bulls, who are a full game behind the 10th seed. So it's a lot of action, and it's a lot of fan bases that are still involved in the playoff hunt, which would normally maybe have been packing it in and moving on to the next sport at this point. So it's exciting. It's not very traditional, but I think it has some chance for success. We'll see how it goes, and then we'll critique at that point a little in a couple of shows from now when those playoffs start to develop. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the NHL, which is. We are in the stretch run right now. There are between 10 and 12 games, depending on where teams are seated, left in the regular season. So the NHL normally does an 82-game season. They have shortened it down to 56 games, and most teams are swimming around the 46 game mark. So we're gonna take it. So the West Division, we're going to start with them because now we have the Vegas Golden Knights, who they've imposed their will, and they've basically just taken off from the mid-season point. The Golden Knights and the Avalanche were kind of just swimming in the middle, it seemed like, and now they have both taken off to the point that they are head and shoulders above everybody else. So the Golden Knights are number 1. With 68 points, and then the Colorado Avalanche are 64 points. So now the Colorado Avalanche, they were hit with COVID a little bit. So they had 2 reported players who had COVID, and they've since been quarantined. And they have a 3rd player who was around COVID but didn't actually test positive at this point. So he's his name's Mikko Rantanen. He is almost he's not cleared yet to come back, but so they have that going for him. So basically, what the West in the playoff picture for the NHL is the top 4 teams in each division automatically make the playoffs. Yeah. So,
but Avalanche still have time since they 3 games not played yet.
Yep, the Avalanche, they have 3 games. They have 3 games in hand on Vegas.
Yeah.
What we're really looking at here is the West Division. They have the Golden Knights, the Colorado Avalanche, and then the almost, I'd say the surprise of the year in every division would be the Minnesota Wild, who have taken the third place, and they are very comfortably in third place because they are 16 games ahead of the fourth seeded Arizona Coyotes at this point. So we Harris and I we said that the West would be like the big three at the top. What we didn't expect was that the Minnesota Wild
Wilds.
would be that third team instead of the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis Blues right now are one game out of the playoff spot behind the fourth seeded Arizona Coyotes. So basically, what we're looking at here is the winner of the fourth seed ends up playing either the Golden Knights or the Colorado Avalanche. So, you look at it, it's probably, it's going to be whoever gets the fastest first round knockout. But, that's the way it goes. And we have, so the Coyotes are 45th. They have 45 points. The St. Louis Blues have 44 points, and they have 4 games in hand on the Arizona Coyotes, which will come up huge down the road. And then the Sharks and the Kings are they're swimming around. The Sharks they have 41 points, and the Kings have 40 points. And between, I'd say the San Jose Sharks and the Los Angeles Kings, they're in very close proximity, but they are polar opposites as far as franchises go. So the San Jose Sharks have been really, really good for recently the past couple of years, and they've had top flight players. They've had a lot of all-stars on their team, but right now their championship window seems to have closed, and they have like everybody else, they have like salary cap issues, so they're moving in a different direction.
So do you think the Kings with 13 games left to go, they can do something, or?
Not only do I think the Los Angeles Kings can do something because they're also they also have 4 games in hand on the Arizona Coyotes, the fourth seeded Arizona Coyotes. But the Los Angeles Kings, they are on the upswing, so they have a bunch of young stars, and basically this is like the trial year that they've done better than they've done better than expected, and now they're moving to the top. If they do get they end up getting that fourth seed and they end up playing Vegas, it'll probably be like a 5-game series. Like it won't last very long, but then you think about the experience that'll be gained from that point will go far beyond any other team that would be able to go into the fourth seed and then just get wiped out. So the Los Angeles Kings are a very young upstart team, and they're doing really well. And they had the number 2 pick last year, Quentin Bayfield, who hasn't even played in the NHL yet. He's been still in the minors the whole year, and so they have a very, very bright future in Los Angeles. Then we're going to move on to the All-Canadian division, which is the North Division. The Toronto Maple Leafs are still holding on to the first seed. It seems like this is another wire-to-wire top team, and following the top seed is the Winnipeg Jets are at number 2. The Edmonton Oilers are at number 3, and the Montreal Canadiens are the 4th seeded team in this playoff. So as far as this bracket goes, the Calgary Flames are 8 points behind fourth place, which it looks like they're pretty much out of it with like about 10 games to go. But then you have the Vancouver Canucks, who unfortunately was my preseason pick to win this division. They've had a rough go of it, and then they had 8 games suspended because of the COVID-19. Their team got really hit hard.
Wow.
So they came back to play this week, and they've taken 2 games already from Toronto. So the interesting story here is that they went from having the most games played ahead of the field to now having way less. and so they're sitting at 39 points. They're 10 points behind the 4th seeded Montreal Canadiens with 5 games played. They have 5 games in hand. So theoretically, if they won all 5 games, they'd be right at 49 points. So they still have a shot at the playoffs. All depends on how these next couple of games go. The likelihood of them making the playoffs is not very good, but anything can happen. and there's still some time left for the Vancouver Canucks. Then we'll move on to the East Division, which is the Lumberjack Division.
This is my division.
Yeah,
I like this
totally.
division.
Yeah, this
The
is
East?
this is basically, I'd say, who's going to represent the East is going to come out like the Eastern, who represents the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I believe comes out of this division. Is So you have the Capitals and the New York Islanders neck and neck at 62 points with the Pittsburgh Penguins, who I think the Pittsburgh Penguins have surprised a lot of people overall this season. I think, with having, potentially four future Hall of Famers on the roster, I don't think there's really any time that it would be surprising for them to be successful. But that's where we are with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they've really clicked on all cylinders as of late, and they are the number 3 seed. And the Boston Bruins are the 4th seed right now at 58 points. Locally, we have the New York.
The 4th seed, but they hot right now, winning 5 in a row.
Yeah, so they've been hot, and the Boston Bruins, I'd say they're kind of defying logic just because they've went down to their 4th string goaltender, and they've had a lot of shifting in and out with defense, and it's almost like they almost have like a no-name defense at this point, but they've just been they've still been able to continue to win, and right now they have
wow.
their acquisition of Tyler Hall seems to be working out really well for them, and they are this team. These 4 teams right now seem to be locked into the playoffs at this point. Now you have the New York Rangers, who are 6 points behind the Boston Bruins, and the last 2 games of the regular season for the Rangers are against the Boston Bruins. So if they can get a fighting chance and try to get into the position to be 4 games, 4 points out with those 2 games remaining, they'll be able to have a shot. But the Boston Bruins have 44 games. The Boston Bruins have 2 games in hand on everybody in this field of the teams that are mentioned. So, is it likely that the New York Rangers are going to make the playoffs? No, but anything can happen. And if they can get into striking distance into going into those last 2 games, they'll be able to control their own destiny. And this is another team, much like the Los Angeles Kings, that the New York Rangers are very young, and they are an upstart team. So any kind of, even this little playoff stretch run going into the playoffs, and if they actually make the playoffs, and any kind of games that they play would be a huge bonus into building toward the experience going down the road. And there you have the Central Division, which is another top-heavy 3-team race between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers, who both have 65 points, and the reigning champion Tampa Bay Lightning, who have 62 points. And then there's a considerable drop-off, and there's 3 teams going for the 4th seed in that playoff, and in that bracket. It's the Nashville Predators they have 52 points. The Dallas Stars have 50 points with a game in hand on Nashville, and Chicago has 49 points. So out of this bracket, we thought that the Dallas Stars would be a lot better than they have been, and they're coming on. They did lose. They've lost 12 overtime games. They actually won one this week, which is pretty surprising. But they have 12 overtime losses. So when this season's all said and done, if they don't make the playoffs, that would be like the top place that you would look is, not being able to win at least some of those games. And the Nashville Predators look like they were dead in the water a while ago, and then they've had a strong second half to the season. And the Chicago Blackhawks have had the opposite. They had a strong start to the season. It looks like they're kind of coming down to earth a little bit, and will possibly miss the playoffs completely. So, next week we'll have a very clear picture on who's going to be in, who's going to be out, and we will touch on the rest of that next week. So, we're going to move on to baseball. And before before we get into the standings and where people are, which 162 game season, there's about less than 20 games played by each team. Not exactly a lot of earth-shattering stuff going on there, left and right. One thing that I'll never understand about the MLB at this point is the rules that they've had in place since last year and the ones they got rid of. So, we've talked on this show on to great length about the 7-inning doubleheader rule. So, doubleheaders they were created last year a lot from like the COVID, and they got suspended, and they got pushed to a later date. So in those situations, they played doubleheaders, but each game was only 7 innings instead of the full 9 innings. Last year, it didn't make much sense to do that, but as far as traveling and keeping people in and things like that, it kind of made sense. Now they've kept that rule into this year, and we've had a couple of doubleheaders, and they've been like the first game 7 innings and the second game is 7 innings. I don't understand the logic of it. I think it's very, very poor that the MLB decides to pretty much take 4 innings out of 2 games. And, with respect to anything can happen. If a team wins 3-1, it's very, very plausible that they could have went, in one of these innings, somebody could have threw up a 3 spot and they could have won the game 4-3. So, it's very, I think it's very hard to understand why they would shorten a game for no there's no plausible reason. It's not like the weather's bad, so they just ended up like packing it up after 7 innings and things like that. They scheduled shorter games, so it just affects the entire dynamic, and it could down the road it's gonna end up costing a team a playoff position completely. They're either not gonna have they didn't have enough time to come back in these certain games. They could have come back in these games. It ends up messing up overall records and things like that. I mean, it's just a ripple effect of, I don't know why they've decided to do this, but they do.
And they're doing a lot of decisions like in the midst of everything.
It's a lot of what the MLB's gearing towards is trying to shorten the games, trying to make them a little more lively to casual fans and things like that. The one thing I'll always take out of baseball is if you're not ready to dedicate like 4 hours of your life to a baseball game, then just don't go. Baseball is not exactly for everybody, but at the same time, there is a lot of integral parts into it that make it interesting. It's just instead of highlighting those areas and focusing on those areas to generate the game. Right now, they're throwing a lot of gimmicks in there to try to shorten the games, to try to make them more, in this short attention span era of life, of society that we're in right now. They're just basically trying to just make everything more of a fast forward process. So, 7 innings, 7-inning doubleheaders. I'm not a big fan of it, and I'm also not a big fan of this other rule where every extra inning game starts with a runner on second base. Yeah,
I was just telling you that.
It's awful. That's absolutely. Yeah. I don't. There have been some exciting moments that have come from this rule. Like, let's say, like there's one team that pretty much like entirely shifted like everybody on like one side of the field and created like 5 infielders, 6 infielders, and things like that. There's been some like weird things, like weird wrinkles that have made it somewhat interesting. But basically you're tarnishing old records, you're tarnishing past records, and you're cheapening the game. So somebody basically is gonna win on a single, and instead of going
actually
through
earning it,
earning the whole process of what a run takes. Like so, a run is either from a home run, you go all the way, or if you chip and claw to get a run home from somebody hitting first base and then stealing second base and then bunting them over to third base and then having a single or a sac fly score them. Like these are the ways that baseball is supposed to be done. And this is over 100 years of existence that baseball has lived under most of these rules, and now, like they're just throwing in gimmicks in there just to shorten the games. Is very, very disappointing.
How do you feel about the double hook?
The what?
The double hook
From the
for the pitchers.
Yeah, I think that's another one that it kind of just it kills the strategy
Yes.
of how it is. So like baseball has a chess match behind it where goes tit for tat, and like what one manager is gonna do, and then the other manager is gonna like counter that move and things like that. I don't see the benefit of having a pitcher come in and having to face more than one batter at a time when like you have like the lefty specialists. The lefty specialists have been around since before TV had color. You had like your lefty specialists who just came in and they were just there to get that one big lefty bat out. It's just like it's totally just. I think it's killing the game. I don't think it's making it more exciting. I just think it's making it more gimmicky and more like. It's like highlighting the fact that baseball is like not that interesting to casual fans.
Not only that, the pitcher has to stay there longer. What happens if that pitcher is not so used to staying there longer than usual? So that means you're going to have a tired pitcher in there, and you can't change them until it's time to. It's not. Like you said, it's a chess thing, and it's not going to be able to work it correctly.
Yeah, it kills the strategy. I think if there's one place to look for the MLB to speed up the games which is not popular. I'd say they should remove a home plate umpire and then just have like the computerized strike zone, because a lot of the times the one thing that drags every baseball game is a lot of walks. If a starting pitcher has 100 pitches before like at around 5 innings, and then like if you have both pitchers at around 100 pitches at 5 innings, I mean, forget it. You're looking at a 4-hour game right away. A lot of what we've seen throughout all the course of history is we've seen subjective strike zones. We've seen one umpire call the outside strike on the black, and we've seen another one, that same pitch in that same location, not call it a strike and things like that. That's a part of the subjectiveness of the MLB that can be fixed right away, because the more strikes that are called the right way, or at least like if it's the same strike. So let's say we have the Dodgers facing the Padres, and they have this computerized strike zone. They throw a strike low and inside. It's called a strike. And then you have Yankees Red Sox on the other side of the coast and on another time zone. That pitch low and outside is called the same strike. If they all called, if you have strikes and balls all called in the same exact locations every single time, that would speed up the game, because there wouldn't be like the subjectiveness or the like trying to sell calls and things like that, and arguments that also lead to like delaying the games and things like that. So getting the strike zone 100% right 100% of the time would absolutely speed the games up 100% and make it more interesting, because a strike is a strike, a ball is a ball. So if everybody knows where this imaginary box is and it's consistent every single time, then it's good. Like you have some umpires who call the low strike, you have some umpires who call the high strike and don't call the low strike. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and that in itself would speed up the game. So if the MLB is going to look at that, and then what they took away, which was one of the new rules that I liked last year, was that they had the 1 through 8 seed. So you have the NBA, you have the NHL, who have 30 teams. Well, one has 32, the other one has 30. Well, actually, 31 for the NHL right now. So you have these teams, and they have 16 playoff teams. So it's almost a little less than a little more than half of the teams go into the playoffs. So now you have the MLB, who went back to the rule of like 5 or 6 playoff teams. I think if they would have kept the 8-team playoff, I think it would have been a lot better, because you're adding on, for the same reason that the NBA seems to have this play-in rule where you have 10 teams in each conference, so you have like 20 teams and 20 fan bases of those teams all being interested in the playoffs. You have the MLB, who could have had 16 out of 32 teams in the playoffs, and having that excitement and buying merchandise and things like that. You've taken that away and you've shrunken the playoff field. I thought last year was very successful the way they did that playoff round. It would have been great for them to keep that moving forward in an 82 game season. 162 games is a long time to create playoff teams, which I guess that's why they feel like the ones who swim to the top should have it. But like if 16 teams are involved, that's 16 fan bases all buying merchandise, all having that creative buzz, and it creates it toward the end of the year too. So like those games that might have been in that last week or 2 week of the season that would have been relatively meaningless automatically means something. So that means more people want to go, and it has more eyes on it, more people are geared into it. That is a money grab, missed opportunity, in my opinion, for the MLB. So right now, locally, we have the New York Yankees, who are 6-11. They are tied for the bottom rung of the MLB. The last time this happened was 1998, and 1998 they ended up eventually winning the championship, which is all you hear from Yankee fans who are who have been brought up with this situation. It's just right now we have the Red Sox who are leading the East Division, the Kansas City Royals who are leading the Central Division, and the Oakland A's who pretty much would be the one typical leading the division at 12-7. So 162 games, and right now each team has played less than 20 games. There's not too much to draw from this. I think it's obviously not the way a lot of teams have wanted to start the playoffs, but wanted to start the regular season. But right now we're looking at a situation where a lot's going to happen between now and October. But it's actually, I think the Red Sox, they're not the same Red Sox that we've been accustomed to. The earlier part of this decade. They are the later part of the last decade. They are right now. They're pretty much an up and coming team. They're not the powerhouse that they were, and right now they're actually 12-7, which is it's positive as far as their organization is concerned. I don't see a lot of these standings staying the way they are. You got the White Sox who are 9-9. Those are a lot of the preseason picks to win the division. I think they end up picking it up, and then you have everybody's favorite whipping boys, the Houston Astros, who are at 7-10 right now. So it would be cool if that held up, but then again, like the Yankees are actually one game under that one, so not much to make fun of there. So, and then we have in the NL, the New York Mets are in first place right now. They have a couple of less games played because of the COVID situation they had with them and the Washington Nationals. So they're a little behind us overall in the games played, but they are in first place right now, which is pretty cool if you're a New York Mets fan. And then in the Central Division, we have the Brewers off to a hot start at 11-7. The Cincinnati Reds have a winning record, and everybody else is kind of just swimming around the middle. The one not surprising hot start is coming out of Los Angeles with the defending champion Los Angeles Dodgers are 14-4. So they picked up where they left off last year, and they are, the eye test of the rosters on paper, and just every sign you could point at points to the Los Angeles Dodgers not only being a good baseball team, but actually like being competitive and like bulldozing the rest of this the rest of the league. The Giants have surprisingly started off to a 11-7 start, and the San Diego Padres, who made almost as many blockbuster moves as the Los Angeles Dodgers did last year, both at the trade deadline and then in the offseason, they've started off at 10-10. So they're off to a rough start there. And we'll touch on some exhibition boxing. So Logan Paul, who's I guess a pop culture star or YouTuber or however you want to call it, social media star. He's had two exhibition fights and he's ended up winning both of them. He's going to be facing um, pound for pound one of the best fighters ever created, Floyd Mayweather. They're going to have a boxing exhibition on June 5th, and it's going to be a Showtime pay-per-view. I think this is gonna be the one true test for Mr. Paul on how he's gonna end up faring on this one. I think his first fight was against a ex basketball player, and then the other one was I guess like the lower rung of like overall fighters. So now he's gonna face like an older Floyd Mayweather. But I mean when you know how to box, you know how to box. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a pretty interesting situation here. And something that I think a lot of people have come down on Logan Paul for like maybe it's like a bit of a jealousy on their parts as far as like the notoriety he's getting for the boxing fights that he's had. And I think exhibitions are exhibitions, and he's been able to not only win them, but he's been performing well in these ones. It's not like he's like when you prepare for these fights and when you actually have these fights, there's a tremendous amount of work that has to happen in the forefront, and I think that's what a lot of people are missing out here. I don't think it's not like he's just waking up, getting off his couch, and then he's just going into the ring and then like winning these fights, and then that's like a whole big deal. I'm pretty sure, even though it is a exhibition, he's taking it super seriously, and the results are made from more than just appearing, and more than just popularity. Maybe the popularity is what got him into the situation, but he's putting in the work in the forefront to perform well and to win these actual fights. So, is he going to beat Floyd Mayweather? I doubt it 100%. I mean, there's been times to bet against Floyd Mayweather and you would have lost anyway, but that there are times that could have happened, but this is not one of those times. You can only go so far and work so hard to get into these situations. And Floyd Mayweather is a decorated champion. I mean, this is like the top of the top, and I'd have to be pretty confident that Logan Paul couldn't even beat like a Mike Tyson or Evander Holyfield now. I don't think so. It's just like there's.
But to piggyback off what you said, they assume he only got there because of his popularity and things like that. Do you think like Floyd would probably be thinking the same thing? Oh, here come this kid. He's not a fighter. Blah blah. So maybe his guards would be down for the first 2 rounds, or maybe the first round. And I think being that he's gonna have his guards down on the first round, this will be Logan's time to attack before he realizes, oh, wait a minute, this guy is really a fighter. So maybe that would help him.
I'd have to agree, but then like there's that next level of preparation, So I think a guy like Floyd Mayweather, he looks at the videos, he's watched the exhibitions from Logan Paul over and over again. He's gonna have that preparation plus his own game plan, and he's gonna be able to basically do whatever he wants. I think there's a master level of the craft, and that's something that over decades and decades, like it's built into a person and a fighter. And in this situation, like Logan Paul is like playing with house money, and he's worked very hard to get where he is, but at the same time, like he's facing like the top master of the field, and that's something that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good fight because you got Mayweather on one side that's saying, wait, I don't want this YouTuber beating me. And then you got Logan on the other side saying, I'm going to try to beat him to show that a YouTuber like myself, which is a boxer, can beat him. Right. So, both heads are going to be high at the same time. But like you said, Mayweather is a technical fighter, a smart fighter. I don't think he's going to lose it.
I think Logan Paul, even to get to this point, has already won. I think that with the 2 exhibitions that he's had and the overall the pop that is generated, which generates revenue, and to be able to get into a ring with Floyd Mayweather, I mean, I could talk all the junk about Floyd Mayweather as possible, and I could say I could beat him and all that. But is he gonna get in the ring with me? Hell no. Like I'm a little guy. Like he's not gonna care what I think and stuff like that. So for him to actually, he could fight anybody in the world. He can get in the ring with anybody in the world, or he could not. He could totally skip out on it because he's already made all his millions and things like that. So. The fact that he's actually making time for Logan Paul to get into this ring, I mean, Logan Paul's already won, like at this point. It's good for him. I don't think, I know I've seen a lot of the airwaves that he's getting a lot of flack, for being where he is and things like that. I don't think a lot of people don't appreciate the amount of work that he's put in to get to where he is right now. And, it's showing off, and it's great for him.
Yeah.
So that'll be definitely interesting down the road. We'll have some previews on that a little later on. So that does it for our show for this week. My name is Alfonso Caldero. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll be back next week. LDM Radio Sports Show.